together. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you're here. Okay, awesome. Oh, and thank you guys for enjoying the garter snake picture post and had some fun with that. I'm glad you guys enjoyed that. Uh, it, the reason why I actually posted that particular picture was because of the location that the little garter snake was at. It was sitting at the right angle, concealed behind a bush, within about 8 feet of me, and laying on top of a little rock, sunning. The reason why I took the picture at the angle that I did was to prove two things. One, it's very difficult if you're not looking in an open area for something. It's very difficult to notice something in a recessed area, even just 4 feet on the other side of another bush from you. Additionally, it's that sort of an angle on the ground, sitting on a rock, sitting in the end of a, little hollow spot, sitting in the end of a hollow log, sitting underneath a little recessed rock surface area. That's where a pugwudgie will sit. They'll sit at that obtuse angle at a intermediate distance where there's something obscuring your initial sight of them. And they'll use a little hole like that through the bush. Oh, to pin you in the side of the head, in the shoulder, in the jugular, because they aim for your jugular a lot, your eyes, any vein that they can find a location to, they'll do that. So that was part of the exercise, to give you some idea of where they might be sitting in their terrain, and you aren't going to notice them. So let's get into the pugwudgie to begin with. And they are considered by loric terms incredibly ancient. They're thought to be lightning beings. So let's get into these guys. So, pugwudgie average about 2 to 2.5 foot tall. They are all black. Their skin is kind of charcoal gray, and their quills are jet black. They usually have amber eye color and amber eye shine at night. And most natives that have seen them say they're about the size of a small dog, medium-sized dog, when they see them. So they average 60 to 85 pounds. Some people would consider that a large dog. I don't consider a large dog anything under 100 pounds. But knee height, porcupine size, or smaller. They're actually slightly smaller from the one I saw. Okay. They'll also sometimes have notched ears. Watch out for any of them that you see with a notched ear, because that means that they have successfully hunted a human. They absolutely hate us, and they dart us on sight. There is no how you doing, no hello, no nothing. We are its prey. They dart us. Natives have known this for a long time. That's why these guys are considered incredibly dangerous. They also live in colony-like structures in hillsides or in shallow cave systems, from what I understand. They've also got some very unique abilities. They can turn into orbs. My native grandmother, when she was 12 years old, she was living in the Santiam Mountains, just outside of Sacramento, if I remember right. And she was riding home from school, and she got darted in the side of the head, or something tried to dart her. It was in a bush line. It was sitting on a stump, a rotten stump in a bush line that she had ridden by multiple times before. And it was around dusk, maybe 20 minutes before dusk, when this thing tried to dart her. And she claimed it had amber eye shine when it was looking at her. She saw it from probably 10, 12 foot away, just obscured in the bush, but, at the right angle, it tried to dart her. Her horse didn't scare, and her horse was pretty well known for being stable, but her horse didn't scare. When she turned to look at it and realized what it turned into bright light, according to her. It was about 3 foot in diameter, and then it turned slowly into a smaller, about a basketball-sized ball of what she called beautiful lavender-colored light. And then it just sort of faded back into the brush behind where the stump was, and it disappeared. She went home, let her elders know, her parents know. They gave her tobacco, told her to lay tobacco and say a prayer the next day where the thing had tried to dart her and apologize for disturbing it, which is what she did. So these guys, always, you're going to need tobacco with you. Sometimes you can't even make peace with them with tobacco. You gotta talk to a higher authority over them, and I'll get to that guy in a minute. So yeah, there is no... Oh, and be careful. Sometimes these guys poison their quills. So don't ever try to trap or tackle one. There are native stories about people trying to, warriors trying to tackle them or trying to trap them and then trying to retrieve them from the trap. They get poisoned on the quills. And these guys are experts with poison. Because what they like to hunt for their primary food source are amarok, which are big archaic dogs up in Alaska. However, kind of wolf-like. Uh, they'll also go after dogmen, because they don't like them either. And the trap that I fell through was probably built by this guy or one of the Memegwesi. So these porcupine people are excellent trap builders, and they do a variety of different traps. Now, according to Uncle Ong's lore, the lightning beings came around when this planet was still not even really a planet yet. He claimed, according to his wild man lore, that the lightning beings came from the Hadean period, while our planet was still attempting to form. The only thing that we found life form-wise on this planet at that time are tardigrades. So some of these weird creatures might be tardigrade descendants. Something else to be noted about tardigrades, and maybe why the boogeyman symbol is the way it is because if you've got a brain, a pair of eyes, and a spinal cord, you are the descendant of a tardigrade. Yes, modern man comes from more primate-like forms of life that have adapted, but all original life that has a pair of eyes, a brain, and a spinal cord all come from tardigrades. Every life form on this planet comes from tardigrade. All mammals, all reptiles, all birds, all fish. And if you get into them flipping their genetics a little bit, you could also include, all octopus, all invertebrates that still have a brain and a pair of eyes. And our oldest sample of tardigrades comes from something like 4.4 billion years, which is just a billion years after, the crust started to almost form, still not really being able to form. Platelet would form, asteroids would strike, and then everything would dissolve again because we were so molten. And that's, according to his lore, why these things have the weird adaptations that they have, because the environment they lived in was lava, a little bit of moisture, and upwards of almost 4 to 14 million lightning strikes a day were occurring on the planet. Over 1 trillion a year were estimated to occur. So if these things formed in that environment, they're going to have adapted initially to avoid lightning strikes and a bunch of other stuff that we don't even have to think about, let alone potentially surviving lava. Now, there is lore all over the planet of different creatures that can walk on lava. They're called rock people. Even Uncle Long's lore talked about rock people. Badger people are part of the rock people. They're supposed to be able to walk on lava and play with lava with their hands because of what they are. We'll get into more of that later. So, hope you enjoyed that. Let's get into a little bit more detail about these guys. Oh, and these guys have claws. They don't have fingernails. And they are lightning quick. The one I got darted by myself, I think that was in 2009, if I remember right, up in Washington. And I was in a region where some of my native friends had told me, oh yeah, there are Bigfoots up there. There's a bunch of other stuff. There's Memegwesi, there's Pukwudjii, there's cannibal Bigfoot up there. There's dinos, all kinds of stuff. So I went into this recessed area of forest. And I was traversing uphill at the time on a little narrow deer trail. The deer trail dipped down and then had kind of a severe grade, about 4 feet to get up. So I had to go on all fours to get up it. In that dip, this thing was sitting in the end of a hollow log. And while I was on all fours trying to crawl up the deer trail, this son of a tried to dart me in the neck through the bush line, through the bush, in at an angle very similar to the little garter snake example. Looked over, realized what he was, slid back down the hill, because it was just a couple feet, stood up, because I figured he wasn't going to nail me again. I was wrong. He tried to dart me 3 more times. Thank goodness I had a thick coat on that day because it was cold. I was in there in like November. It was slippery, wet, muddy. So he took advantage of the terrain very well. And obviously had been sitting there to dart either a dog, a deer, or something on all fours trying to climb that hillside. So he's an ambush hunter of another type. Alright, so let's get into porcupine people. So, critters like this, there are a variety of them. The largest ones are reported to be man-sized, but I'm just going to cover the two smaller species that I am aware of in the northwestern region here. And we'll get into the others later. So, there are several still living species of these things. These guys, on average, are about 2 foot in height. As previously said, they are lightning beings. They always attack humans. The reason is we had a war with these things. The Plains Indians, the Algonquin, Iroquois, Modoc, all of those northern tribes, they've had conflicts. Some of them really recent, within the last 400 years, over thousands of years, about 2,500 years actually. The last one, though, that one cost us a lot. 5 great nations had to get together to try to stop these guys and their associated family members from taking up the Greater Lakes area. Because they had come down through Okanagan territories all the way over into... So they came down from what would be now the Lake Ontario area all through the Okanagan. They came down from straight above, which would have been the old east of the Thunderbird territories. And there were tons of these things up around Hudson Bay area. And around the late early 1700s, these things started pushing in a triangular wedge form, like they were punching, going to go straight through the middle of the United States, down through the grasslands. and they were coming in all directions to try to accumulate in mass and come down. So native tribal people got together, and we basically stopped them. They it took us over 80 years to stop them. It was not a short battle. And after that war, they've never forgiven us because it cost so many of them their lives. They absolutely hate us. I'll get into that too here in a little bit. And we'll talk now about the individual group of porcupine people that actually helped stop the war when native tribal people realized it wasn't winnable on either side. We didn't have anybody specialized enough to completely eliminate all of them, and they couldn't get all of us. So some of the tribes like the Hunkpapa and some of the Lakota and other tribal people that had things like dog soldiers, we got together, we counseled, no, it's not going to work. We're not going to win. So we sent emissaries to these guys, the Memegwesi. Now these are what you would consider. These guys is like police force. They're dog soldiers. The culture that's slightly larger and slightly bigger and slightly more powerful that says no, we gotta stop. So there were native tribal people that were, dog soldiers and medicine people and elders who went and made an agreement with the Memegwesi for trade, rights to certain areas and territories in the north, if they would make peace with the Pukwudjii for us and help us build relationships again. The Pukwudjii would not agree to a relationship again. Trading was done. No more. Don't want anything to do with you. Because both of these cultures at one time had been amenable with people. These guys stayed amenable longer, and some of them still will act on your behalf if there's a Pukwudjii involved in your circumstance. And you'll often find the Memegwesi living in the same area as the Pukwudjii. And these guys can be anywhere across the United States, maybe even around the world. But they had one big characteristic is they all have porcupine quills. So they're really archaic, whatever they are. So the Memegwesi, they stand 3 to 4 foot in height, and they're a little heavier. They're 150 to 200 pounds, and both of these species are as strong as chimpanzees. They're 4 times stronger than us. So they can still, even these little guys that are only 2 foot tall, can still twist a leg off, twist your arm off. Be careful of them. They're not as weak as they look. And these guys have slightly lighter gray skin. They're also considered lightning beings. They can do the same sort of thing. They have extremely fast movement. They move like lightning fast. They can change into orbs. Some lore says that these guys can change into other creatures too, meaning they can remember more ancient forms of themselves and are, society people or order people that have learned certain skills, medicine skills that allow them to do that. Be careful of that too. They're also considered the first iron smelters. According to Uncle Ong's lore, these people were the first ones to work metal of any kind before humans. Now, metallurgy has actually come up spontaneously around the world, multiple different cultures at multiple different times. There is no one primary metal age. So keep that in mind. They have yellow eyes and amber eye shine. The one that I saw the same day that I ran across the Pukwudjii. Now these guys were maybe 200 yards apart. This one was further up the trail. And on the upgrade, instead of sitting in a position to take advantage of straight across angle for attack, he was taking advantage of a upward position to dart me from above. And he had put poison ground spikes in the trail to make me step off the trail, or anybody to step off the trail. I was in the process of swinging around the tree using my hand around a little, like, 4 to 5 inch sapling to avoid the spikes in the trail when he tried to dart me in the face. And I saw him because I looked up after I got, the dart coming in at me. I looked up and here he was sitting there like, huh. And I'm like, oh. I said hello, put my head down, told him I was sorry for the disturbance of the other Pukwudjii. I didn't mean to disturb his hunting, and to please extend my apologies to the Pukwudjii, and that I'm sorry that people didn't understand ancient ways anymore or respect them. When I looked up again, he kind of had his chin up and he wasn't looking at me, he was just giving me a sideways glance. That just means, oh, okay, I got my eye on you. So I nodded and I went on. Again, bring tobacco to these guys. These guys will accept tobacco from you, and sometimes they'll help you. And they still will help children that are lost in the woods according to lore. Pukwudjii won't do that. They'll lead a child astray, but these guys will bring them back. They have better family values. Alright, so they have fingernails. They don't have claws. They have a much more porcupine-looking face instead of or porcupine-looking mouth, but a more human-looking nose. When the Pukwudjii have a more porcupine-looking nose, it's wider and broader, but still has a human element to the look of it. These guys don't notch their ears. They still hunt humans, and we're known to hunt humans, but you have to do something like hunt alone in the middle of the night, um, destroy an area to get what you want, take an animal that didn't give itself to you. So you have to do something that's against their natural order of things. And you have to be offensive about it. Then they'll probably make you disappear. Because they're also protectors. They're considered spiritual protectors of the woods. Alright, so they also have black quills. They don't typically poison their quills, though. And their quills are actually shorter than the Pukwudjii's. And they're stiffer. The ones on their heads stand up more and down the ridgeline of their back. They've got a sharp, almost roach look, from what my grandmother said, to, like a roached mane, to their quilling down their top of their head and down their back of their spine. They also have kind of hairy, mostly not hairy, but they do have a little bit of hairiness to them. They also weave, and they make leather shoes with cog metal spikes on the bottom of them. Look very similar to Roman military cog shoes, except they don't have any front toes to the bottom part of their shoe. The upper side does look very similar to a Roman military crossover, but it has a moccasin look to it as well. Unusual to see. When I glanced at this guy and I put my eyes down, I was trying to get a better look at his shoe. It looked like it was constructed in 3 sewn layers. And it had cross-tying with leather. There was quill work on it. So he hunted porcupines, or he used his own quills to decorate his moccasin, military boot, whatever the heck that thing was. And their tracks, when you find their tracks, they have the weirdest track type when they're wearing these shoes, because you'll see this, Let me just draw a real quick sketch. You'll see this funny little kind of half U shape. It'll have this cross patterning in it from where the spikes sit. And then it's got toes. It doesn't look like, they're attached to anything. It's because they aren't. The front half of the shoe doesn't exist. It just covers the front part of the ball of the foot and back to the heel. So when you find their tracks, they're very weird looking. He was also wearing a pouch that looked like it was filled with these darts. And it was woven material, and it also had quilling, had particular patterns. And I did not draw the specific patterns that he had on his tribal gear, because those are considered sacred, so I can't represent them. But I could tell an elder, I could show an elder or another medicine person exactly what those markings were, because that's sacred lore. Dart gun, his darter device, was also marked in a very traditional manner, showing it was his property. The little Pukwudjii, too, had marked elements on his blow dart gun. And these look like reed darts, like cattail reeds, what they were using. And the little darts that they were using were like slivers of wood with hair at the end of them, or split quilling, potentially. Or maybe really young quills, because they were very uniform shaped, and they looked like little rabbit puff on the end of them. Fuzz for, stabilization. These guys, like I said, are also considered a metal worker, and the one that I ran across, actually sitting up on this little ledge, he actually had a stone next to him that had flake material around it, so it might have been an anvil. I don't know where his hammer might have been, the hammer stone, but he may have also been a tool maker, because it was originally tapping that drew me to the area. Maybe he was working on something and I just disturbed him, so he decided to dart me. And they are considered, all of these porcupine people are considered fiercemen. So they're considered very difficult to battle. They're very strong, they're very fierce fighters. Alright. Oh yeah, and modern science has recently gotten examples of tardigrades that go back to 4.4 million years, during the time when we had multiple lightning strikes per day, millions a day, on the surface of a still cooling planet. We found the first evidence of DNA and RNA from this time period now. Let's get into the Memegwesi, and then we'll get into the battle territory. Alright, so 3 to 4 foot in height. Again, they are considered lightning beings. They have the gray skin, yellow eyes with amber eye shine, 85 to 110 pounds, sometimes bigger. Because there are two types of these. One's got claws and one doesn't. The one I ran across didn't have claws. So there's another version of these guys with a similar name even. They use bows and arrows and blow darts. Again, they're poison users. They hunt with poison. They weren't known to poison their quills in battle, though. They considered that dishonorable. So they have a standard difference there, socially. They do also make limb swing traps, so you can pull a limb of a tree back, you pin it around something, you run the trip line down to where you can put a trip bar. So in Animal Crossing, loose the branch, and they put big, this size and larger to maybe 9-inch long, carved wooden spikes on the end of tree limbs, and they poison the heck out of the spike. They also make, both of these species make a mushroom-based poison that only kills dogs. Won't kill a human, won't even make you sick. Specifically kills dogs, and it's a neurotoxin. Kills them in like 30 seconds. Alright, these guys are also reported to turn into orbs, change shapes. They will taunt you before battle by laughing at you from the woods. That was something natives talked about when trying to fight with these guys. They would be in different pockets in the woods, and they'd laugh at you from different directions. And then they'd start darting you and coming at you. Okay, so... yeah, okay, this is all information I've kind of gone over. Uh, Once both of these species were friendly towards humans after the Pukwudjii Wars, no more friendly from the Pukwudjies. And these guys, because of the help that they had given to end the war, we didn't give enough celebration and thanks. So they felt that they were not honored for what they had contributed to ending a really long war. And they considered that they had been rebuked. And that's why they're unfriendly towards us. The other thing is part of the reasons for the wars is the northern people, when it became difficult to survive during the Ice Age, they stopped trading with these species, or they would reduce their trade. They would shortchange them in the trades, decreasing their ability to survive. All of these species, these porcupine people, took offense to that. It was an early form of racism on our part. Cultural, you know. That's why if you make your apologies, they're much happier with you. But they're still not going to be undangerous to you. Alright, so let's get to where the Pukwudjii War happened. The last one. Because there have been, coming from the north down, there have been sequences of wars throughout a couple of thousand years. But the last one, the really big one that broke our relationship with them in modern society, like I said, happened somewhere between like 1670 and about 1730. Again, around this time was also some issues up in this region with the face eaters in the 1730s. There was a lot of unrest in this battle area. So it extended pretty much across this entire midsection of Canada, below Hudson Bay, around Hudson Bay, all through across into the Okanagan, into the Northwest, what were considered Northwest Territories, or would be. Followed the edge of the Rockies, down into Navajo regions, and then also followed the delta waves down into the Mississippi, all around the Greater Lakes, and up through the upper edge of Maine. So it took the majority of Native American tribal people from this region uniting in order to subdue this situation. And it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a simple few years. This lasted like 80 to 100 years of battling in this region. So let me answer some questions. Since we're about 35 minutes in, I'll switch this around. Hope this has been informative. And then we're going to talk a little bit maybe about some cave art and some sacred sites and how they culturally work into some of this stuff. Let me go up, take a look at some questions. If you've got questions, put them in all capitals. Makes it easier for me to pick them out. I'm realizing I think I might need another prescription or better glasses. Or maybe just better lighting. Uh, hey, Brandon from London. Good to see ya. Phil, how you doing today? Oh, thank you. I'm glad you like my drawings there, Crodmog. Giant hairy slug thing laughed at me. It was up into a tree north of me. Did that giant slug thing have fuzz on it, hair, Phil? Because oddly, I have some lore about a strange thing up north. I didn't think they still existed. Huh. 20 to 30 feet. Yeah, because there's supposed to be giant spiders, giant slugs, and there's also supposed to be some sort of a. It's either a skank or legless lizard type, or maybe a horned reptile of some sort up there too, in your region, Phil. At least there's old lore about stuff like that. I don't know how long ago any of them have been sighted, though, at this point. Because my lore is referring to stuff that was still seen 150, 200, 300 years ago. So I don't know if any of them would be even left now. But it'd be interesting to know, because some of the unusual life forms are talked about in Native American lore really makes you wonder how old or how hidden they are. Oh, good to know. I'm glad that you like my channel's information. Oh, wow. Interesting. Yeah, because along with these porcupine people, there are also still mole people, like Uncle Long's friend. And then they also have a quill type on them, but their quills aren't like modern quills. The porcupine people have an almost modern quill structure. Not not in the mole people. The mole people have a real big quill. Looks, if you ever seen the giant pins, that multicolored pins that you can get at the store, you can click the different, the ones that are like 10 different colors. Por, the quills on the mole people are about the size of those pins. So they don't have a porcupine style quill. All right. So some of the stuff, when my grandmother was traveling around the United States, she would talk to medicine people. She would talk to elders. She would talk to anybody that was willing to talk to her and take her to any sacred site because she was a medicine person for her family. Any lore that she was trying to understand about her own culture, she would ask other tribal people, do you have any lore about this kind of creature in your area? What was your lore like? This is what my lore was like. Did you ever have any conflicts, encounters? What kind of information do you have? Information sharing. That's what a lot of powwows were about. It's information sharing. You go talk to your elders. You go find out who your elders are. See if they know the same stuff you know. Ask questions. Have them refer you to other elders or medicine people that might know something, if they're willing to talk to you. So when my grandmother was doing that sort of thing back in the 20s, 30s, and pre-World War II, uh, she was introduced to a cave. It's still considered a sacred society cave or a sacred order cave within the tribal system. And I'm not going to tell you which tribe because I'm not technically allowed, but I can talk to you about the structure and the types of things that you will see in this sort of artwork and petroglyphic writing, because it's also something you'll find around the world in other parts of the planet. There's some of this sort of cave art and whatnot going on over in Spain and France, you know. So there's other examples. There are even caves in Africa, there, Australia, etc. So let me turn this around real quick, and I'll show you what I'm trying to talk about here. So when you're dealing with ancient cultures and societies, you've got that which is sacred and unknown, the lore of the past to a certain degree is kept hidden because you don't commonly go to where these things live and you don't live with them anymore. However, your general understanding, what's written on the wall in front of you, sometimes quite literally, excuse me, will be your known, like, event lore. Any exterior or front of the cave wall art is going to depict the last destruction that the tribal people in that area survived. Volcanic event, asteroid strike, whatever. It might also include like more ancient imagery, you know, the previous era and ancestral stories. Now, this is all the common lore. It'll also tell of new trades or unusual animals that were hunted with regularity. And they will be detailed. They'll give number. They'll give direction. They'll tell if the hunt was long, you know, if they had to run it down for miles, etc., that sort of thing. It also will sometimes show indications of the tribal people's territory or their totem animal, their tribal identity, and what they call themselves in some way will also typically be in the front, or how they built their homes, where they built their homes. They will show this sort of thing on the walls and in the front of a cave. Now, and these sacred people, the sacred hunters, the Deer Society people, the medicine people, there are stages. They're allowed into this cave to learn the lore. Because it gets weirder and stranger the deeper you get into these caves. So these individuals that know this ancient lore are the bridge between the normal tribal people, and if they see something out on a hunt they can't understand, you go talk to an elder, or you go talk to a medicine man. And if it is something dangerous that you have seen, and you've engaged it, observed it, etc., that gives you an in to become a society member outside the internal medicine system. You might be considered a reincarnation of someone, a gifted individual that isn't known yet. Maybe the Creator has chosen you. So you're given access to more information in the cave. And the caves that were chosen in the Native American culture, they have to be smooth backed. They cannot have any cracks. They cannot have any crevices in the roof or in the floor. And the reason is because this area is considered safe enough to talk about this that the cryptids that you're talking about can't hear or see you. They can't come through a crack to look at you like some of the Comazotes people might be able to do. They can't walk through the front of the opening without being noticed by the people that are here. So it's considered a safe zone, too, to a degree. So in these regions of the cave, and they're kind of three zones. This is everybody's zone, the green zone. This is your sacred hunter zone, the people that are trained to do things like hunt deer for particular ceremony, life, death, uh, celebrations, ceremonies, powwow. These people are the hunters for those food types for the rest of the society. And they're under the advisorship of the elders and medicine people. And many of these society people are tribal elders as well, male or female. Excuse me. So the lore in this cave area will change. The representations will change. Uh, you don't paint any faces of humans, especially if you're part of a sacred order, uh, society, or anything like that. You cannot, any religious society, you cannot depict the face of the person. If you do, you are considered attempting to steal their magic. The reason why their faces are not depicted in cave paintings is to preserve their hunting magic. So there's always plenty, always bounty. They always can find game when there's hard times, bad winters, harsh droughts. Okay? They're considered sacred hunters, sacred warriors. And they're often related to the medicine people, but not always. They can be chosen from the rest of the culture too if there's some promise of their behavior, some moral nature to their being too also brings them into this society further. You have to understand right and wrong. Alright, when you get back into where medicine people are trained, you're shown all the different cryptids, paintings of the cryptids. They'll have representations of faces, because we're trying to sometimes get rid of them. So we're trying to use magic to drive them away from the area. You know, looking at themselves. If they came into the cave to look at themselves, the theory is they'd be scared and the magic would drive them out. Old lore. Regardless. In this area, the paintings of unusual things. Big-headed creatures. Round-headed beings. Things with horns. Things that turn into light, look like they've got balls of light around them. It's because they're lightning beings. Those creatures can turn into orbs. So that's kind of how you can look at some of the cave paintings and some of the lore in association with it. It was an attempt to keep ancient lore that was spoken alive. You had to have a pictorial representation in order to tell the story about the creature that your ancestors knew about. When these caves became abandoned, they became lost. When the people that knew the lore about what these different things were that looked so different, when they died, the lore was lost. It's been that way for almost 170 years now. Dying of our lore, dying of our culture, a loss of understanding here. There are some tribes now that don't have enough lore left to understand which cryptid is incredibly dangerous and which one isn't. That's really bad. So anyway, let me turn this back around. If you guys got any questions, go ahead and we'll cover them. Well, that's interesting. It's hilarious that we are putting such value on certain things today that only have value because of how loud they scream. Sort of like congratulating a child for acting out badly. Alright, well, I think that covers these guys, at least the first part of them. I am going to have to get into what an amarok is, and some of the other species that are up in the northwestern territories, and what's up in Alaska. I think I might try to go from top to bottom and then across. But as some of this lore actually covers a good portion of the United States, and sometimes extends into Canada and down into Mexico, because we had marriage agreements and trade agreements as Central Tribal people all the way up into Nova Scotia and all the way down into Maya territories. So there's a lot of native lore that people have tried to push into one group, or try to condense down and make it into one cohesive story. Can't do that with native lore. You have to understand that each tribal lore is individual. There may be some things that are shared. There might be some creatures that, cryptids, that several different tribes knew about. They may not all share the same lore as to their origins or their abilities. Some things may be very common. You're also going to find areas where certain tribes had contact with certain types of cryptids and nobody else, anywhere else, had contact with that particular type of cryptid. The Los Gatos Cave people. That's very restricted, very isolated area, and only the local regional tribal people and people that live in that cave opening today are the only ones that really know about that particular cryptid. Occasionally some information will get out. Occasionally somebody will try to go to the area. But that particular cave system is owned by a private community. It's been there for a very long time. So you can't go to even look at that cave entrance anymore without having the community's permission. Or they have to let you know where you can observe it from safely. And nobody's allowed there. It's private property. So you're also going to run across that sort of thing. Some of these things you're never probably going to get any more information about. Because the communities that live in the area own the property still, and or bought property that included that region in order to preserve it. And there are now quite a few individuals around the world who are trying to buy up certain portions of woods and properties Some are buying them to preserve them, and some are buying them to try to turn them into hunting preserves. And then you've also got Hollywood. They're trying to isolate tracts of land so they can turn cryptids and Bigfoot into a round robin of movie making affairs where they take you on tour and get your reaction to the latest hotspot. All of these spots used to be sacred spots. All of these spots were considered holy. When the natives, the tribal people in those areas that considered those locations holy, were relocated or removed or no longer alive, those those holy spots became your national parks, your preserves, your hiking trails, your beautiful scenery. They had different meaning to different people. So when you're going into what you think are hot spots, know that you're going into old ancestral grounds. Probably old ancestral holy spots or locations that aren't recognized anymore, aren't even, in some cases, known by Native Americans. Or they are known and they have no recourse. They can't do anything about it. You know, maybe they want to preserve it in a different way. That's never going to happen. Politics will never allow it. As it is, we've petitioned to get many of our artifacts back, even bodies and bones back. Heck, we're still trying to petition the Mayo Clinic to return the 28 individuals that they've boiled down and used the bones of for public display in their medical museum. They were all dead natives from after Little Bighorn. Trying to get our stuff back from museums. It's never going to happen. They're never going to pay attention to their own laws. They didn't pay attention to their own laws when they took the land and the items and lost the lore. Now they're trying to keep it all and tell you what the truth is. So keep that sort of thing in mind too. We are a culture that modernly thinks they understand more than they do, and thinks that their preservation work is something that is desired by the people that they're doing it to, so to speak. The culture that they're doing it to, or cultures more aptly. Because, like I said, every tribe has their own culture. We're all like little separate nations. We all might share a few similar cryptid stories or whatnot, because these things are everywhere. That, our local indigenous culture is going to be different. Our understanding of how we came into being, our cultural lore is going to be different. One tribe might say that we came from a giant snake and a woman. Another cultural story might say that a giant fish brought people here. Another story says we became people when living on the back of a giant turtle. So cultural stories are all different. It's the cryptids that remain the same. When you find the stories that all match about the behavior of something, then you know you found a living creature that we've interacted with. It's something that is still potentially modernly around as well. And these creatures, they're not modern. They've survived probably 4 or 5 of the great epochs, if not all of them. Because there hasn't been any epoch so far that has 100% destroyed life. We had one that took it down to 1%. That was the very first one. Right after we had a landmass into the Ordovician period. That one took out 99%. But we don't know how much life was there before. And what we do have, fossil-wise, suggests the world was teeming with life There was a ton of life. There was all kinds of different life. We just don't have a lot of fossils to some of it. And we, out of that, how many survived? We're not exactly sure because we don't know how many species. Were there 1 million species here when that event happened? Were there 5 million species here? We can make some guesstimations, but that's always going to adjust once we find more fossils, get better testing, or we find better ways of pulling DNA evidence out of rock and soil, which we're still working on. We're getting into the beginnings of that with your environmental DNA tests. But you just recently, like in the last 3 years, we've finally gotten to a point where we can do some environmental testing that's a little more archaic. Now we can go back about 20,000 years with environmental testing and some material types. Still working on that science. I would love to see, once we get that science perfected, of how much of this, 3 billion, 3.5 billion gap of we don't know nothing period, how much more we could fill in. You know, we do have a little bit of evidence of stuff in all of these different time periods. We've got examples, we have fossils. We just don't know how much life. And we have an idea, we have estimations. But that's it. We don't have any solid numbers in any of this stuff, except for eras. You know, we can map that in the rock. So we can go back and be pretty confirmed in our geologic record. Know that it's pretty secure and defined, and that we understand it well. Okay. Hey, Demi, how you doing? Phil, true of all of the separate nations allied as unite people who would not, who would know what might happen. Yeah, very true. Tina, when I was a teen, I did see the Jersey Devil. Scared me so bad. Yeah, I bet. I never want to see that thing. And that's another thing. If some cultures see some cryptids as cursed beings, while other tribal people a few hundred miles away might see them as a completely different thing, or have a completely different understanding of them. For instance, in the Lakota myths, but not in the Hunkpapa, uh, there's lore about the Wendigo. Now, on one side of the stories, it's considered a spiritual creature. It's a being gone bad because of possession, inhabited by a spiritual creature. You know, an evil force, a dark entity. You go further north, you got up into the Modoc area, Algonquin, some of those tribes that hardly ever talked to anyone. And the Wendigo becomes a different thing. It's still man. It's still a person. But it's not a person possessed by an evil spirit or taken over by the desire to be carnivorous. Nor does it have the qualities of the Cree or the other Crow variants of Wendigo where they get massively large, or the Iroquois versions where they get extremely huge. You get more into that central locale of stories, and you get really ancient stories about Wendigo that were people that had gone into archaic forests that ended up coming across fungus that infested their bodies. They started growing mushrooms out of their bodies, and eventually their heads, shoulders would become covered in antler type protrusions would occur, before they would spore and spread the disease again. But it was only people that had gone into certain locations in the woods. Now, what these northern tribes would do, because there was no medicine to cure them, and if you touched them while they were alive or dead, the spore could spread to you. So they would have to have specialized people within their community. Because once they were infected by the spore, they also became disassociative. They became violent. They would start eating their own bodies, and they would start straying away from the community. Sometimes we drove them away. And then we had special hunters, people who knew how to handle the problem. Because you couldn't... they're like a rabid animal. There is no cure for the disease. So it would be like you getting rabies, and you know you can't cure the person. You know that it is infectious. You know it can spread. And you know that where they die, if that fungus takes effect in that mycelial mat, in that ground, that fungus spreads. So there were Wendigo hunters within the community from sacred societies and orders of medicine people. They would go after Wendigo and kill them and burn them because it was the only way to get rid of the infection. Now, modern people might consider that murder, but it was preservation of people at the time. It was choosing to eliminate the one individual that was infected by the disease or have the entire community be infected by the disease. With no cure, there's only one answer. Either you all die, or one dies. Harsh truth. The other is we didn't have conflicts with our tribal people, and we had really good trading systems and tribal route systems all across the Americas before we were intruded upon, before other cultures came here in a violent perspective. Then things went wrong for us because there was no more peace. Okay, Tina, when I was teen. Alright, the tree stuzzle. So, what does it look like? Hopefully she gives you a description. Okay. Cosmic. That pisses me off. Natives are completely shut out of visiting their homelands where they originated from. Yeah, I know. Anyway, my mom and I, just to do my turnout, we had to write to the government for special permission. And we had to write to the forestry department to get special permission. And we had to wait until they said it was okay. Yeah, I couldn't just go do my turnout, even though it was finally legal for me to do that sort of thing. Yeah, in some areas of the Grand Canyon, natives aren't, even the people that live at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, they're not permitted in certain parts of the Grand Canyon anymore because it's considered parks districts control now. The natives at the bottom of the canyon only have a small parcel of land. It's not like it was. It's not like it's advertised. Take a look at the tribal boundary and then look at where they actually can go. Big difference. That's one of the most heated areas, actually, for that sort of discussion, is the Grand Canyon. Because there are some sacred spots we're still allowed to because they're within the constraints of the land bridge theory. My mom and I even had that kind of a problem here in this valley. There were petroglyph rocks carved in this area that went back 40,000 years. But because they're not officially recognized by the government, tribal systems can't formally recognize them. They're not allowed to. So those stones are just blown up. They're turning history into rubble so they can put in parking lots. And it's because this government refused for many, many generations to understand us, to recognize our history, and to understand how far back it goes. And that's something that's probably never going to be addressed. The 20-ton stone here that had petroglyphs all over it, I watched it be blown up after my mother and I had written. We'd written to our congressman, our governor. We'd written to the tribal people. We'd taken pictures of the stone. We told the history of the stone. It's now used, the stone, what's not thankfully being kept in private by some person that was very kind to donate an edge of their property so part of the stones could be stored that had writing on them. The rest have been used to reinforce waterways in this area. My native history, my people's history, are rubble used to reinforce waterways. And that happened in the 80s. So I don't care about anybody else's culture. I don't care about what you modernly think you understand. I've witnessed some of the continued disgusting behavior about the argument of how long Native Americans have been in America. We've been here longer than anybody understands. And we know it. And we understand it. Because we tell stories about ancient cryptids when we still hunted them. Oh yeah. A lot of areas are restricted. Or in tribal lands, the tribes aren't allowed to protect cryptids, for instance, or other tribal people in that way. And yeah, it's just getting worse. It's not changed. It's just being done more quietly and more openly, all at the same time, right in front of you. They're counting, I guess, on our inability to understand our own history. But that's all right. Nothing can be done about it unless we choose to do something about it, and that's going to take laws changing and court battles and lots of time. Well, anyway, it's been about an hour and 14 minutes. Looks like my doggo wants to go out. I think I've covered all of the information. If you guys don't have any more questions, I'll probably end it here in the next few minutes. Hope today's been informative. I hope you've enjoyed this. And then I'll probably start doing more like little weekly videos, in between videos on this sort of topic, filling in some of the old lore and trying to give some depictions and some sort of understanding of the different kinds of cryptids and creatures that are out there, and kind of where some of the lore suggests time-wise they come from. I'm going to get some more into societies and orders and how they function within tribal systems over this summer. So y'all can maybe understand some of that a little better, because it's not really talked about unless you get into like cultural studies or folklore studies. You don't really get exposure to other cultures at this kind of depth. It's usually more surface information you get, like in documentaries and stuff, because they don't have the ability to go and talk about this stuff because they aren't allowed to go see these sorts of areas. And the examples that we do have are archaic, and nobody knows, currently scientifically what they're about because, well, they don't have any modern comparisons. Yeah, in fact, some of the areas that my grandmother visited, she technically went into the place illegally under the guidance of an elder, which shouldn't have been there either. But was her choice. And they're probably both passed away by now anyway, so I know my grandmother is. There's no way to hold them responsible for that. Besides, it was too many years ago. Okay, Autumn, hey, welcome back. That's why they were called First Nation people. Taught by man of the forest. Yep, caretakers of Mother Earth. Yep, that's very true. Uh, Phil, land claims are exploding in Canada. Who knows where it goes? Oh my god. I was wondering about that. Thanks for letting me know, Phil. Java Odyssey, I think. You're awesome. Thank you for educating us. Oh yeah, no problem, Java. Glad to be here trying to, preserve my grandmother's, her understanding of some of these cryptids, and a little bit of my tribal perspective too. But, families could also, because of their marriage ties and because of their connections to other tribal people, family lore within a tribe can also vary slightly as well. So there's those nuances that modern people don't think about so much. I know, baby. Want to go out, go potty? Are you hungry? You just want jerky? Oh, you winked at me. All right, I'll get you some jerky. Gosh. Okay. Chan, how is the travel preparation fund going? I'm sitting at 5 grand. I've got a found a shop this last week that might be willing to take a look at the front end of my vehicle. I gotta go over next week and get an appointment with them and see if they can fix the issue with my front shocks. Because I've got sets of bolts that are backed off, so the nut and the bolt are not seated and close together. They're backed apart and they're rusted. So they're backed off and rusted, so my shock bounces with the bolt occasionally and shifts. And that does not make me feel comfortable about putting a tow package to tow something behind me until I can get my front shocks dealt with. And for some reason, a lot of the shops in this area don't want to deal with it. But I just found a more locally owned shop that deals with undercarriages that might be willing to help me. So I got to go over and see if they can fix my shocks issue, or if they can do a lift job on it and just replace the things. And then I'll be more comfortable about putting a hitch on that thing. Because a lot of shops are just telling me, oh no, it'll be fine. Like, I don't think it's going to be fine. And that doesn't sound right, guys. I know, spell check really sucks things up, Makes it come out the wrong way. Yeah, no problem, Tina. Phil, I'm indigenous 100%. That word means person of the land. I was born here. I'm parents too. And yep, 100% true, Phil. Yeah, we ancestors. Our culture here goes way back. If the basalt tracks in this area in rock bedrock are any indication, then Bigfoot and potentially human beings have been here, or variations of us, or something that has feet like us, has been here for a long time and may have, you know, died out and come back again. Because sometimes species, even though there's mass extinction, something later will develop that's almost the same or incredibly similar. That's happened with several different timelines. You know, reinvention of the same wheel because it worked well the first time. Reinvention of the same species because it worked well the first time. So sometimes stuff comes back, doesn't just survive. The other is that some of our stuff is so modern and so new and so isolated from ancient DNA haploid groups, we can't even figure out what they are. For instance, prototaxides. Prototaxides is a plant. Uncle Long talked about prototaxides being a flowering plant that he believed, because he remembered from his reincarnation dream of harvesting and eating that particular plant. And I know where there's some fossils of root fossils of the dang things here in this valley that are in 147-year-old bedrock, along with tracks. And that's way after they were supposed to be completely off the planet and died out. That plant was supposed to have been gone by then. So anyway, because prototaxides originally were 30, 40 feet tall and about the circumference of a telephone pole or larger. The prototaxides that are in fossil down here in one of the riverbeds, though, only grew to about 4 inches in diameter, maybe 5 or 6 feet in height. They only bloom once every 100 years, according to him. He said that they had a taste between like a cucumber, or cattail root with a bit of a mushroomy fungal aftertaste. And he believed from his dream and what he remembers of it, because reincarnations you can remember scents and tactile sensations, etc. He claimed that when preparing it and harvesting it, you picked it out of the ground like a mushroom because it had a round bulb base to it. And that when you sliced it, it had kind of fibrous material in it that allowed for pockets of or chambers of water to form. So in drought, it would survive by sustaining itself on stored water. So he felt that it was some sort of either prehistoric cactus that had no spikes, a fern, or another oddball life type plant that was a combination of several different factors. Because he also said the interior of it was very spongy and similar to a mushroom interior. When you have a larger mushroom and cut it apart, it's got that kind of spongy flesh inside. So to him, it was more like a fern mushroom or something along those lines. But at this point, prototaxis have actually been discovered to be so flippin' odd, they're in their own new group. They've recently decided that they're not exactly a fern, they're not exactly a mushroom, they're not exactly a cactus, they're not exactly anything we've run across. So they're now in their own classification group, like tardigrades. We've now discovered that enough different tardigrades, they are their own species type of some sort. Ancestral, but really ancient. Okay. Autumn. I walked across America. Long walk, 1978. To abolish 12 legislative bills to save land and water and hunting rights. I walked all the way to D.C. Wow. Autumn, that is amazing. Okay. Bad Pup. Some native groups who are indigenous to the Grand Canyon have access to their territorial land, but where Kincaid found Egyptian underground structures and artifacts, gold, no one is allowed to go but the government. That is correct. That happens a lot more on native land than you realize, Bad Pup. Look at the Black Hills. Doing pretty good. Autumn just trying to relay some information and have a good weekend like everybody else. Yike. Okay. Yeah, no problem, guys. Just going back through, making sure I don't miss any questions before I end the show. And Bigfoot, nuclear DNA shows Bigfoot Papa was here before us, possibly. Oh yeah, that was something else I wanted to touch on. When you're dealing with tardigrades, and you're researching tardigrades are a bit unique. And I think when Uncle Long was trying to describe it came from a species of creature that had three genders, he was probably trying to explain to a 7-year-old what tardigrades are and what they became. Because tardigrades can have both genders, they can be male and female, and they can lay eggs that are fertilized by a male, and Marmor tardigrade lays the egg that's been fertilized. Kind of like modern chickens in that way. There is a third gender, though, tardigrades. The asexual hermaphroditic gender, like a, nightcrawler, ground worm. So their third gender is born pregnant, doesn't have a male DNA strand, it's a clone of itself, produces female offspring that are born pregnant, clones itself, lays eggs. So some of these cryptids that we can't find father line DNA for may have originally come from an asexual reproductive creature. Additionally, if you think in those terms, some of what my Uncle Long talked about makes more sense. So he claimed that some lightning beings and the creatures from the era of the lightning beings could reproduce with themselves. Some humans can do that too, if you're hermaphroditic and you have two sets of organs that are functional. It would be a survival tactic that goes back way far into history, if that's the case. I see you pointing out the jerky. I know where it is. You know where it's at. I know. It's horrible. Give me a few minutes. She's not happy. She's gonna beg. Are you a beggar? I know, I know. Okay, okay. Let me finish, then we'll get out of here. We'll feed you and we'll go for a walk. Okay. Okay, bad pup. Morphography of the Egyptian symbols, the carvings on the outside of the yep. You'll find that there's some of that more petroglyphic morphography of Egyptian hieroglyphs are going to be kind of everywhere because the Shunkook went everywhere. They were kind of like ancient helpers, ancient police force, ancient sailors. That's the other thing. We did a lot more sailing around this planet than people realize. And also, when you're looking at the concepts of Pangea, we didn't have to sail anywhere because we all lived on the same continent. So some of the lore that we can't distinguish might actually be far older than we realize, just because of the way it's depicted. Like when you're looking at Campbell's work and how he looks at all the different lore being shared culturally as people came in contact, maybe it's the other way around. Maybe we all had an original lore that was shared that later became dispersed and broken after Pangea broke up, and we respectively became isolated populations on land masses that became divided over millennia. And then now, maybe our latest and more trackable evidence that's only been in the last few million years is that we finally realized we can cross country again. We can go back. We can go to other places. We can travel. You know, maybe the out of Africa theory is backwards. Maybe it's more like we're out of every place and we have been migrating back and forth for generation, Asia, Africa, America, etc. Or maybe we only started migrating again recently after being divided for so long. And those of us that had no reason to migrate because we didn't have horrific drought conditions that lasted for hundreds of thousands of years in their country, had no reason to migrate. Maybe reason some isolated steppe regions in Asia, which have next to no trees, next to no water, why vast strips of land that have next to nothing on them in Africa. Those people might want to migrate to something that had territory that was more flourishing, had more game. That might be a bigger driving factor to traveling and relocating than anything else. Lack of food in your homeland is going to force you to move. Destruction of your homeland is going to force you to move. Otherwise, you're going to stay put. And some cultures have never moved. They've always stayed put. So they weren't out of their environment. They weren't out of the nature of their ability to survive. Okay, I'm running through them really quick. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm just running real quick through the rest of these conversations and comments. Flight path of the monarch butterfly is super interesting. Stars from northern Morocco, Mexico. Yeah. In fact, since you're down in that region, if you go to Oceano, California, Cosmic, you'll find that there is a monarch forest there. Eucalyptus trees that they come into every year to mate in. And that particular group of monarch come all the way from Japan. And they come to the west coast in Arroyo Grande, California, to their hereditary forest to mate. And when they die, the roadway along that area, 2, 3 feet, you'll see butterflies stacked on the side of the road in that forest. And it's a coastal, it's Highway 1. It runs between Gilbert City, Oceano, California area, up the coastline to Pismo Beach, up to Oceana, or Avila Beach, but in between Pismo Beach, down into Oceano. Nothing but butterflies for months. They're beautiful. They're everywhere in that area. And that's not too far a hop away from you. You could probably go visit that one, Cosmic. She's being really patient for as much of a... Here, let me show you her protest point right there. You're being really patient for as much of... I know, baby. Okay, okay. Alright, guys. I have no choice. I must pay attention to her. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And more to come. Keep you updated, and I'll keep making these history maps and regional maps. That might help people understand, how extensive some of these people are in their locations. And also keep in mind that, some of these cryptid people and some tribal people actually intentionally walked away when we were being colonized because we didn't want to surrender and we didn't want to become part of the culture. So keep in mind that, and do have a few examples of pictures of people in my pictures with cryptids, so keep in mind, some of these people don't want to be found. They want to stay as they are. They want to live as they always have lived, and they don't want to join our modern culture. I know of one tribe that's got over 200 members, maybe even as many as 1,200 people that live underground here in the Northwest, and they live right. There are cities and communities and highways and modern culture all over their area, all around them. They still don't want anything to do with us. They prefer to live the way they are. And they're not interested in surrendering or changing. So sometimes when you're a researcher, you have to consider, should I talk about this area? Do I know enough about this area? I can wisely judge that. Maybe I should do more research. Maybe I should understand the area. Just food for thought. A respectable way. I respect nature of thinking about other cultures and the possibility of culture. It's not so much about discovery. It's more about rediscovering. Learning again. She's not going to forgive me for this. Karma and all dogs. Yes, sweet angels they are. Very, very true. All right, everyone. Have a good day. Have a great weekend. See you next Saturday. Do another show along this line. I'll probably do some drawings this week and introduce some cryptids and put up another, which one do you want to see first? And we'll get into it. And again, I'll probably do some more pictures throughout the summer of obtuse and unusual angles with something, sitting clearly in the open that you can't see because your brain isn't trained to see it. We're trained to look at a garter snake in the open territory because that's how it's always pointed out to us as a kid. You see them in the open grass. Your parents point them out on the top of a rock. You sit down in a bush line, next to something, if you don't know exactly where it's going to sit or where it's sitting when you take position, you can fall into an easy trap because of your own behavior. So, have a good one, everyone. Thank you so much. Take care. Yes, ma'am, I'll get you that. Yes, yes. I know. Jerky on your mind. Okay, okay.